Welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and today's car is pretty special. It is the Mercedes SLR McLaren, but not any old SLR. This one is the creation of MSO, McLaren Special Operations. And that is a division that generally do all the bespoke work, and they also look after all the McLaren F1s as well. And it's in a building on an industrial estate in Woking, away from the technology centre that you associate with McLaren these days. Before it got technology centre, this is where McLaren operated from with its F1 cars, etc. Now they do all this bespoke work, and they've turned their attention to the SLR. Now, the SLR appeared in 2003, and I can remember going out to South Africa to do the first drive for Evo, and we were met by this creation. McLaren was partly owned by Mercedes at this stage, and Mercedes wanted a hero car, ultimate car. Gordon Murray was involved in the development of this car, and this was our first time to drive it. Carbon fibre, this incredible supercharged 5.4 litre engine, 627 horsepower, but it had a 5-speed automatic gearbox, and then it had some strange hydraulic stroke electric braking system on it, all sorts of odd stuff. And when we drove it, it was quite a confusing car. Because you've got to remember, this was launched at the same time as the Porsche Carrera GT, the Pagani Zonda was around, and they were all the same sort of price. This was £313,000 new. 325,000 bought you a Porsche Carrera GT, and a Zonda was about 350,000. Today, well, you can buy a McLaren SLR, I suppose, for around the £200,000 mark. A Carrera GT is 750, 800,000, and a Zonda, well, it's gone crazy, 3-4 million, I suppose, for a C12S. But MSO have 18 years between then and now. The SLR has developed, and that's why I was very keen to get another go in the SLR with the modifications. Now, this video is not just going to be a regular road test. We're off on a road trip. Hurrah! Obviously not into continental Europe, but we're going to the Lake District in this car. So we've got 3 days trip ahead of us, and we're going to see if this can play the role of the GT. That's the idea. But first of all, let's have a closer look at what MSO have done to this SLR. Well, the first obvious change is the colour change on the car. You have to remember, when the SLR arrived, it was only available in 2 colours, silver or black. Now you can have it painted in any colour you want as part of this package, and I think it looks spectacular in this incredible turquoise blue. The other thing they've added is a different design on this chin spoiler. It's sort of from the 722, but this is unique to this car, just the way it's moulded. It integrates really well, and they've done quite a lot of work actually on the aerodynamics. And they've managed with that, there's different rear diffuser and some other changes on the floor to 2.5% reduction in drag. That takes a bit of doing, especially when it was all computed by Mr. Murray in the beginning of 2003. But God, it does look good in this colour. The other thing they've done is a different wheel design. This is a 19-inch wheel, and it's 2 kilograms lighter than the turbine wheel that was an option when it was first out. I should mention it's got carbon brakes anyway as standard on it, and then there's a lot of work on the braking system. Other thing, the exhaust. Now, it was always a statement of the SLR McLaren, these side exit exhausts, and it was a packaging nightmare because it's so close to the engine. And how you get the catalyst in, how you all package it, how you keep it cool, etc. But Gordon Murray was insistent that it happened because he wanted the flat floor, the diffuser, to work perfectly with no exhaust getting in the way of it, hence the side exhaust. MSO have developed a new system which is on this car. It's 30 kilos lighter than the standard system, and it's valved as well, and it adds a little bit more horsepower into the bargain. There is suspension change as well. There's 10mm lower ride height, new dampers, new spring rates. They've done things to the steering. There's a new UJ in the actual steering linkage and a different power steering pump. So really sort of gone right through the car, the changes. This car, just so you know, is on a trade plates because it's actually PP17, because this is a pre-production car, a sort of working car within MSO, and this is the one they've modified. But I want to show you the interior because there's a huge amount of work done in there as well. And what here is they've got this cord carpet, which is a throwback to what Mercedes always fitted to their cars in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and I think it works spectacularly well. And then the leather is this woven leather on the seats. Again, there was no options to do this when it was originally produced in 2003-4. As you can probably imagine, there's a cost to do all this work, and if you had the whole lot done, £131,000. But you can cherry pick the bits you want doing. Aero package, £12,500. The handling kit, suspension, steering, £7,000. Wheels, £8,800. Exhausts, depending if you have valves or not, it's either £9,500 or £11,000. It's the paint that's a very expensive option to change the colour. £56,000 to do that, and then £46,000 to do the retrim and get the bags, etc. Quite a bonnet as well, all carbon fibre, obviously, big hinge at the front, and there we have it. I remember, I read actually, Gordon Murray said he had moved the engine position 1 metre back in the chassis from where that original Vision concept car Mercedes produced for what this car then turned into. Right back. I mean, it is quite amazing how far back it is. And I mean, there's the radiator there. There's crash structure up the front. Obviously, it breathes up there. There's the engine builder. This is a dry sumped engine now, and it delivers. So it's rated at 626 horsepower, 636 perhaps in this, with a different air cleaner and exhaust, etc. But it's the torque, this monumental torque, 770, 780 Newton meters of torque from this thing. That was huge compared to its compatriots of the time, and it's actually the reason why it ended up with a 5-speed automatic gearbox. That was the gearbox Mercedes produced, and I know from conversations with Brabus, it was the strongest gearbox available. And they tried it with different gearboxes, but that torque just destroyed gearboxes, so that's why it got that gearbox. Can't wait to get packed and get on the road. So you'll join in a few moments. We're just going to take it down the house, throw the bags in, and disappear off, and we're off on our road trip. We're well on our way, 129 miles from home now. Yeah, the great thing about the SLR is it has a huge boot. So took it down the house, chucked the bags in, loads of space. So there's potential for shopping up in the Lake District. We'll see if we want waterproofs and walking shoes and stuff. And so far, what I've learned is you think it's this SL55 Plus, it's much more than that. There's a harsher element to it. It's quite an angry thing, and there's a constant V8 rumble. You can hear it there. If I do the decibel count, it's around 77, and then you just touch the throttle and it goes up to 80, 81. So it's very definitely a V8 grumble there all the time. So what I'm going to do, instead of just going up the motorway, that would be the easy way to Lake District, I decided to do a little diversion into some favourite roads in North Wales. So I'm going to drop down a secret little road I know into Bala, and then across Cerrig-Drudion and Riffin, etc. Just roads I know well, and then get back on the motorway rather than just one giant motorway slog up to the Lake District. So it'll probably be a bit more scenic when you join us later. interesting. We've just been across the moors, dropping down into Barla. It's a road I know well. It's sort of challenging as cambers. There's sheep about as well. But it's just an interesting car to punt. It does feel its size on a road like this. You're so far from the front. It's like piloting the car from the rear seats of a conventional car. There's so much out the front. It sort of reminds me of an oversized caterer like that. You're almost sitting on the back axle. The thing is the gearbox does show its age and the speed of change. I've got it on the fastest change, but it's really nothing like a modern, the ZF8 speed, like in my Project 8 or something like that. It's really quite a slow change, especially the down change. There we go, slurs it in. And being a 5-speed, it's quite gappy. And then the brakes. The brakes are a gazillion times better than the ones I experienced on launch. But they are still a bit odd. It's like if you ever driven a truck with air brakes, it's a bit like that, because what you're doing with the brake pedal is not pushing on hydraulic oil to the calipers. You are giving an electric instruction to a valve to release more pressure to the brakes. So it's sort of, there's an in between you and the calipers. And it's not a solid pedal, and it does take some getting used to, and there is power there to be had, but there's that awful sort of initial sensation because the pedal doesn't hit a hard point, that there's no brakes, but then you are slowing down. But they are so much better than when I experienced this car on launch in South Africa, when they were just a reason not to buy the car. Now they're just, you adjust to them. They're just not like other brakes, that's all. But yeah, God, it's got some grunt though. Serious, aggressive power delivery. Quite a lot of grip. It just generates a lot of mechanical grip. I think I need to get to know the car better to feel really fully engaged. I feel slightly a passenger in it at the moment. I'm not utterly on top of the car, but I'm into the first morning of a 3-day experience with this car, so that's okay. So anyway, we're going to get a bit of a wiggle on. We're running late, but we're dropping to Barla and then up to Kerrigdrid towards the Evo Triangle and that sort of area. Close at times. Right, well, we've arrived at our destination, which was the Queen's Head Hotel in Troutbeck, and we've come here because eons ago, centuries ago almost, I did a geological study here of this valley, this famous glacial valley here. I did geology for A-level, and there's a tongue, where a glacier has dropped its deposits as it's sort of retreated back, so it's quite a famous feature. SLR, one of the advantages of the SLR you discover in a place like this are its doors. These sort of dihedral doors mean you can open the doors in quite a tight space. I thought we didn't have anywhere to park, but yeah, we got in here, no problem at all. And I was just looking how many miles we've done. 327 miles we've done today. We've averaged 50 miles an hour, and it's taken 6 hours 35 minutes, and we've done 20.1 mpg. So I think that's enough for today. We're going to book in and enjoy going inside a hotel. God, really quite excited. It's been so long, and you'll join us sometime tomorrow in this just stunning location. Well, morning from the Lake District. As you can probably hear, it is absolutely chucking it down. Yeah, this is one of these sort of showers you get up here, and it's come from nowhere. I checked the forecast this morning. Yeah, it's going to be dry all day. Yeah, honestly, I think they telling 40 pies on that one. This is the Kirkstone Path. We came out of the Queen's Head Hotel this morning and you're actually on the pass. We're just having a few days in the Lake District to see what there is here. I think this rain is going to stop fairly shortly. I do hope so, because it's got lower. It looks bright over there. But yeah, the Kirkstone Pass, it's scenic. It is not a driving sort of road. It's not good surface. There's cyclists, there's sheep around. There's very poor visibility because of the high stone walls, and I am feeling the width of this carbon fibre, very exclusive supercar that's left-hand drive as well. But then I'm really enjoying its automatic gearbox, its automatic wipers, and all the sort of normal Mercedes trappings of a usable car. But what we're going to do today, we're just going to have a little look around the Lake District. Hopefully this rain is going to be temporary, but there is something called the Lakeland Motor Museum, and I feel this area is known for Donald Campbell, what he did on constant water, and sadly died in 1967 with that jet boat, that hydroplane boat that's been lifted from the lake. There you go, the rain has stopped already. So we're going to go up here and then down to Ambleside. This little, if you just swing the camera around, the road we're going down, we're going to Ambleside via, what do they call it? The Struggle. 6'6" wide. Yeah, that's about the width of this car. So yeah, that's what this area is like. It's a beautiful area, but it's not really somewhere you bring, well, you don't bring a crazy car like this to enjoy its dynamics, but you do bring it just to see the scenery. There goes the road all down into the distance. So yeah, go and check out this motor museum and see what it's all about. Right, well, we've just been round this Lakeland Motor Museum. I mean, it's stuff full of exhibits. There's all sorts of cars in there I didn't expect to see. It's quite a lot of micro cars, little Peel cars, Messerschmitts, Jaguar SS I saw in there, but also the earliest surviving TVR number 2, which sort of looks a little sort of Lotus 7-esque. But yeah, I mean, well worth a visit on a rainy day. I mean, it's not one you would drive 1,000 miles to go and see, but it's just very full of all sorts of exhibits you wouldn't expect to find. Oh, a lot of bikes and pedal cars and things like that. I wanted to see it because it has a separate hall with an exhibit of the Campbell, Donald Campbell and Malcolm Campbell, the world record cars, and also those boats. There's K4 and K7. So I've got a model of K7. And K7 is the boat that Donald Campbell had this fatal accident on constant water, trying to set a new world water speed record. He already held it at, I think, 276 miles an hour on Coniston Lake, but there was an American threat and there was talk he was going to go beyond 300 miles an hour. So Donald Campbell put a new jet engine into K7 and went out in 1967 to try and break the 300 mile an hour record, and that's where it all went horribly wrong, and that famous crash of it flipping. It was 1967. I can remember seeing it on the news, and you constantly have seen it being replayed over the years. So what I thought we'd do now is go off to Coniston Water, actually see the lake where this all was happening. So let's disappear there. I'm told there's a ferry across Windermere Lake as well, which I thought would be quite fun to take the car on. Sometimes you go at an angle. We're on. Phew. That looked a bit close to me. Good. Well, that was easy. £5 well spent. I'm paying the extra £1 so my dear wife can film the car going on and off as a passenger, because you're not allowed to leave the car once on. So I'm paying £6 rather than £5. But I think that's good, so she doesn't have to talk to me for the whole crossing. She's quite pleased too. Well, that's the ferry experience going over Lake Windermere. All pretty painless. I was amazed. On the ferry, you're not allowed to get out, which is a bit of a shame, because I'm sure it's pretty lovely. So if you go over as a pedestrian, it's probably really nice. Apparently there's really good walks on this side, and you just dive back. And all a bit of a bargain at £1 for pedestrians and £5 for a car. It just shows you how changeable the weather. We had an absolute rainstorm this morning, and now, look at it, it's just lovely. Coniston Water. What's that say? Coniston. Oh, that's the run. Donald Campbell saw when he was trying to do his runs. Well, this is Lake Coniston, and we just stopped by here. Really nice spot actually, the Bluebird Cafe by the lake, Coniston Water. There's some fantastic photographs of Donald Campbell and the K7 boats actually in the cafe. They were just telling us is actually this is the point where when they in 2001 when they brought actually that boat out of the water, they found it and Donald Campbell's remains. This is actually where it was landed. They were saying actually a few weeks ago there was a 100th anniversary for Donald Campbell held here with the family coming up. So yeah, it's a nice place to visit. Very different to Windermere and that sort of thing, but it's just nice to follow that story of Donald Campbell. There is another museum here, and I'm understanding there's a bit of a fight of where K7, the one that was pulled out of the lake in 2001, which museum is going to get it, whether it's going to go on a world tour, but I'm sure that'll all be resolved in the future. But yeah, we're blessed with the weather at the moment. We're going to try and make the most of it now. So we're going to dive up into the hills. There's a pass I want to do a bit further up from here. So that's what we'll go off and do now. Oh dear. Hard Knot Pass, 30%, 1 in 3. Narrow route, severe bends. Here we go. Right, we're bailing, doing the Hard Knot Pass and the other passes. I've just met a Harry's Garage viewer in a little lovely MR2, and he says it's a bit sketchy. There's big potholes, nowhere to pass. You're committing to these uphill bends and you can't see round and you don't want to meet anyone. And I didn't like the access road getting to this point. So I'm bailing. This is not the place for an SLR. I'm back an early night at the hotel and perhaps up the Kirkham Pass instead. So yeah, choose your car carefully if you want to do the Hard Knot Pass. And yeah, McLaren SLR might be just a step too far. If you look round the sort of road we're on anyway, it's so narrow and there's just no passing places at all. Fortunately they're bikes, so there is a parking place for them. But yeah, we met about 3 cars down here in a row, and it's not easy. It's very pretty, as my wife keeps telling me, but it's not really a place for a McLaren SLR. Well, morning, it's day 3 with the McLaren SLR, and I thought I'd just explain what we're going to do today. Great day yesterday in the Lake District, very much a sightseeing sort of day and following the Campbell story right to Lake Coniston, etc., and abandoning those that hill climb, as it were, that pass. What I learnt yesterday was the Lake District is very definitely not a sort of driving route. You do not enjoy the dynamics of the car. You want a small, easy car to live with, narrow, can do humps, and perhaps the SLR isn't best suited to that, but I'm very grateful for its automatic gearbox and its sort of easygoing nature. Today, very different. We're going to go up onto the York Moors, much better driving roads. So just a little summary of where we've been. We've stayed here, Troutbeck, this fantastic valley. This is the Kirkstone Pass, is actually sits on it where we stay, this Queen's Head Hotel. That's up to there, and then we did that little bit, the struggle down to Ambleside. We then came down the bottom of Windermere, went to that motor museum, Newbury Bridge down there, and then headed across a little ferry to head off to Coniston Water, which is there. And there are those passes, the Hard Knock Pass, etc. And we abandoned it about here. That is incredibly narrow, and because it's a tourist area, pretty busy and a bit painful. I think I might do it on a motorbike. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in a car. But today we're going to head east, Kendal, Sedbergh, wonderful Hawes, Yorkshire Dales National Park up here, and drop down to Settle and that sort of area around here. But before we go, I thought it'd be worthwhile just giving you a quick tour of the interior, because I haven't done that on the SLR and it's a bit different to everything else. Yeah, there's a biggish sill to get over, but we've got pretty used to it actually. It's actually getting out, there's a little bit more of a struggle than getting in. This example actually has the paddles for gear change. They were buttons on the first ones, but about 2007 they changed to the paddles on here. I am met in this car with the craziest speedo I've ever seen, because it seems to have a kilometre speedo that's been converted to miles an hour. So I am looking at a 360 mile an hour speedo, and well, up to 70 takes up a tiny proportion of the speedo. Fortunately, there's a digital speedo I can stare at anyway. Wonderful cruise control. Mercedes cruise control of this age was the easiest cruise control to use. Big vents. Bizarre, this is shiny silver here, no sort of screen. It's you know, you have to go back. Oh, this is a 2003 car, so therefore it didn't have the big navigation screen. Hiding under here is the radio, etc., and there is a navigation function on this, so it will speak to you navigation. You haven't got Bluetooth and phone, but if I press this little button here, I have the old style phone in there, Nokia phone, and a big blue spanner, which I presume brings an engineer running up from Woking should I break down in this. Well, actually it won't come from Woking, it will come from somewhere in Mercedes land. This is another little cubby hole in here. This is your charge point, which is a slight pain because you put that in and then you can't actually close the glove box, which is a bit of a wind up. That's the only 12 volt outlet. Handbrake, mechanical handbrake there as well. Vents, 70 degrees, etc. This is the gearbox controls. So I've got comfort, as they term it, manual, then these paddles work. They don't work unless you've got it in manual, or a sports setting. And there's not a huge amount of difference really when you put it on sports, and then you've got these 3 upgrades to make even faster changes. But in 2021 they're normal slow changes, they're not particularly speedy at all. But being a Mercedes, being sort of all this control, the air conditioning, etc., ventilation works a treat. I think it's quite good sound in here as well. It's got a Bose system, so it's very livable. MSO were telling me that they're developing a glass roof for this as well, for the coupe, so that'd be quite good. Oh, there's one more storage area I ought to show you. Very awkward. I don't know if you can see this. There's a button up here, I press here, and then this lifts up, but it's almost impossible to access. But there is somewhere you can hide valuables and stuff out of sight, out of mind in there. Right, anyway, to start, twist that, lots of buzzes, and the best feature of all, a flicker button there, and engine start. And then the best sound starts of all. Oh, you can test the wing as well. If I just press that, I can see the wing flip up and down at the back. I really like that feature. It just tells you this is not an SL55 at all, and as soon as you hear that V8 grumble in stereo, you definitely know you're not in a regular car. So head out of here and then we're off to Yorkshire on some better roads. left the Lake District, we're on the North York Moors now, just gone past the Ribblesdale Viaduct. Ingleborough is on my left, and completely different sort of roads. Oh, I'm so glad to leave those narrow little lanes away. We're big open roads up here, and this car is in its element up here. Suddenly we had wet and dry roads this morning, but in the dry, my goodness, this ferocious engine and a lot of grip from a chassis that, you know, this is an uber stiff structure, just generates this mechanical grip, and you can lean on it and you can feel it buck as it sort of delivers the torque. I haven't turned the ESP off because it seems to, you know, it doesn't bog down or anything, and I'm right at the limit of adhesion and it's not cutting in, so I'm quite impressed with the ESP system on it. And I think it's actually probably worthwhile keeping it on because there is so much torque here, and you know, if you get on a dodgy bit of tarmac or something, it could spin you sideways, I'm sure, in an instant. And I don't feel as though I'm missing out by having the ESP on. But anyway, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to summarise my thoughts of just what this SLR by MSO is all about. Do it as a straightforward likes and dislikes. There's just too much to discuss with this car, but I will start with some of the annoyances. And I suppose, yeah, number one is the size of it and the strange driving position and the way it's so much car ahead of you. Sometimes on the sort of brows, it's like doing an off-road course and you simply can't see ahead of you what it is. There's no parking sensors as well, and I'm sure either end of this car are very expensive. So yeah, it's a big car, but it's that carbon fibre construction also gives it a completely different feel to something like an SL55 or any of the regular cars. Even the SLS, it feels quite different to SLS as well. Then the ride quality is an odd one. That when I was up on the moors, it had real control, body control, that lowered, stiffer springs, and it felt very dynamic, which when I first got into this car I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting to be a sort of monstered sort of GT car, but there's a slight compromise with the ride quality due to the change in dampers and things. They're an MSO enhancement as part of the package. Be aware that it's not a sort of GT ride comfort, and they're passive dampers, so it's not as though I can press comfort, etc. Now, when I first day with it, this is a great thing when you live with a car, the gearbox annoyed with the slowness of it. Whereas I've got to know the car, and 3 days in, this 5-speed gearbox sort of suits it. There is a monster of torque available from this engine. 770 Newton meters of it beat everything back when this car was launched. It beat Koenigsegg's, it beats Pagani Zonda, something like a Carrera GT and the Ferrari Enzo don't even get a look in. This has got half as much torque again as those cars. And with this gearbox, you're basically always in the right gear. I've tried manual, but it's not a very nice change on the wheel anyway. And you're never short of torque to just power out the bends. Just sometimes if I don't want it to change down in the gear, I might just flick into manual. Then most of the time I'm very happy in Sport and 3. Another thing I think MSO have done superbly is the paint and the interior and the leather. They just work, and they have given this car a new life. I can't get over it. It's 20 years old. It doesn't really look dated, and the build quality, my goodness, it just feels absolutely solid. And the owners all tell me that basically it has no known faults. And that's why I'm going to come to one of the downsides is servicing costs and things like that with an SLR. McLaren don't actually service this car. You have to go to Mercedes, and in the UK that means going to Brooklands, and you've got to reckon on about £12,000 to service this car for the annual service. Now, the flip side of that, having spoken to owners, because it just doesn't break, it's bulletproof engine, drivetrain, everything. Some of them, because they're owning the cars long term, they said, oh, we only do it every 3 years or something, because they only change the oil. There's no known faults with the car, but it is a downside. It's a bit Veyron-esque on running costs, but then it's a more usable car. For a carbon fibre 208 mile an hour 600 and something horsepower car, it's a very usable car. We would not have done what we've done today in a Carrera GT or any of the other sort of mid-engines cars. And then the handling and the feel, I know this car better than I did on that day one, and I trust it more. Now I've really lent on the chassis. It has incredible grip, and I like the way it sort of wiggles at the limits. It makes it feel alive. It doesn't feel inert. So I can see that it's a very addictive car. The sound of it is pure muscle car, but it's a purer sound than a general muscle car. And then it's this shriek as you use all 7,000 RPM, which you'll do pretty rarely. Let all the horses go. But we did find on the motorway there is a resonance. Gets a bit annoying, but wonderful sound, just the burble at normal speeds. I must mention the steering as well. It's not nearly as twitchy. It used to dive over cambers before. It doesn't do any of that anymore. They've changed the power steering. It still feels quite a heavy steering, but basically I'm enjoying it. And they did a change of pad 10 years ago from the first cars I drove. The brakes are a non-issue almost now. You very easily get used to them. They've got great power. I love the interaction. I love the way you think the boot lid's open when you're braking hard. Spoiler does its action at the back. But would I buy one? I'd be very tempted actually, because it is such a different car to anything else. It's still slightly confused. It's still not sure if it wants to be a GT or a track weapon with this suspension setup. Maybe the standard suspension would be more GT-like, but it is highly usable. It seduces you. I feel as though I've been bewitched by the SLR on this 3-day tour, and I am immensely grateful for MSO for letting us use the car properly, and I know I just don't want to give it back, and that is always a good sign. So there you go. It's lovely to revisit. Very interesting car, lots available, 2,000 or so of them sold. Usable, MSO getting behind it, great active SLR club. I can see the appeal of this car. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, well, keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.